We're going to get started in just a moment once I have all of the candidates. Oh my gosh, right? Hi there, good evening. Thank you to the Beloit community and the candidates for attending the first annual Spring Candidate Forum, which is co-sponsored by Wisconsin Policy Monitor LLC and Eyes on Beloit School Board. We will have Eric Olson coming from Madison. He is with Wisconsin Policy Monitor. He's stuck in traffic, so he'll introduce himself in between the school board and the city council forums. My name is Tori Champany, and I'm pleased to be invited to be your monitor for tonight's forum. We have 6 candidates for the Beloit School Board. 5 of them are with us here tonight. Starting down on the end, we have Megan Miller, Juan Romero, Joanne Rue, I'm Tori Champany, Bill Johnson, and Greg Schneider. And there is also Kenda Roman, who unfortunately was not able to join us this evening. I just want to go over a little bit of the forum procedure. To start, each candidate will have 1 minute for opening remarks. Next, we'll have our question rounds. Candidates were provided the questions in advance. One of those questions will be drawn at random for each individual candidate to answer. The order that you're sitting does not matter. Each candidate does not answer the same question. Each candidate will get their own question. The initial response from that candidate will have a 2-minute time limit. After that initial response, I will take rebuttal responses from other candidates wishing to speak on the topic. The rebuttal response time is just 1 minute. If you would like to make a rebuttal response, please raise your hand really high, because the way I'm sitting, it's going to be hard to see you. I will do my very best. I have a note here to keep track of who does rebuttals when, so that we're, sharing it around so everybody's not doing the same rebuttal. We'll get through as many questions as possible in our time limit. I anticipate 3 or 4 rounds. Marianne is sitting over here. She will be the timekeeper. She'll hold up a card when you have 20 seconds left of your time, and then she'll hold up a stop when your time has elapsed. Again, just a reminder, 2 minutes for your initial response, 1 minute if you're giving a rebuttal response. I will ask that everybody please silence your cell phones so that we don't interrupt the candidates. And this forum is being streamed on the School District of Beloit YouTube page, and it will also be posted after the forum. Any questions before we begin? Okay, thank you. And I'm going to go just in order, just starting down on the end, if that's okay. Like I said, they're random draws. Oh, yes, sorry, we're not going to questions. Yeah, thank you. We'll start down on the end, sorry about that, Megan with a 1-minute introduction.
All right, perfect, thank you. Thank you so much for organizing and hosting this forum. My name is Megan Miller. I am a reading teacher. I'm a proud mom of 3 daughters who attend the district, one of whom receives special education services. Among the reasons that I'm running is because I really value my kids' safety, education, and growth. I want to make sure they have positive experiences. Couple of credentials. As the board president, I helped initiate the strategic plan that has yielded 3 years year-over-year growth on the state report card. We've been impacted by budget issues and still managed to produce balanced budgets for the last 2 years, despite being arguably the district most adversely impacted by the de facto segregation caused by a broken state funding model. As an educator, I do know that there is no one-size-fits-all solution for any child. And so I'm really interested in continuing to serve so that we can strategically plan to meet the unique needs of all of our children. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Megan. Up next, Juan Romero.
Good evening. Thank you to the Wisconsin Policy Monitor LLC and Eyes on Beloit School Board for hosting tonight's forum. I'm Juan Romero, and I'm running for the school board because I believe our children, teachers, and community deserve the strongest support possible. My parents worked tirelessly for a better life, and their values continue to guide me. We're a blended family of 6 children. My wife and I moved to Beloit in 2024 to be closer to family and raise our youngest son in an environment where every child can thrive. He's in 8th grade at Fruzen Intermediate, and I firmly believe our school board should reflect the rich diversity of our community, ensuring that every voice is represented. Tengo mucho orgullo de mis raíces hispanas, and I want to see that pride and diversity mirrored in our leadership. With a background in telecommunications, construction, and healthcare, I bring a practical problem-solving skills and a compassionate hands-on approach. If elected, my priorities are clear: to ensure safe learning environments, practice fiscal responsibility, focus on student achievement, and rebuild public trust through transparency and open dialogue. I'm ready to listen, to learn, and to work together to unlock Beloit's full potential. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan. Joanne Rue.
Good evening. This is a wonderful turnout we have here tonight. My name is Joanne Rue. I am a graduate of the Beloit schools. I was taught at Royce and then McNeil and then Beloit Memorial High School. I got my degree in elementary education 1 through 9. I also received my certificate in ELL services. I have a master's in curriculum and instruction, along with a special certificate in early childhood education. I'm a mom of graduates from the Beloit schools as well, and my own children received special ed services as well as ELL services within our district. I've worked within the schools as well as in the county, and I know what services we have available to us and what the needs are in our district. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. Bill Johnson.
Now they can hear me, though. I'm a lifelong Beloit resident. My whole family has went here. My mother graduated in 1939 from Beloit Memorial. I graduated in 1973. I started out at Gaston, and then I went to Lincoln, and I went to Aldridge when they had the change over to the 9th and 10th, and then I went to the high school for the last 2 years. So I'm a proud Beloit Memorial graduate. I worked for the city of Beloit as a street supervisor. I tried my best to get the snow out of the roads and the streets, and if I didn't, I'm sorry, but I tried. After I retired, I went to work for Aramark and Compass. I delivered food and supplies to at least 8 schools every single day. So I was in every school in Beloit almost every day, and I seen a lot of things that I didn't care for. I work for Community Action now. I pick up people to
Apologies,
get the
Bill, I
trains.
have to cut you off.
That's okay.
Thank you, though. Greg Schneider.
Good evening, and thank you all for being here and for taking your time to become better informed voters. I am not a native of Beloit. I moved here in 2007, but during my time here, I am now a Purple Knight. In fact, I even had my grandson live with us for 2 years to take advantage of the excellent education that was being offered here. Having worked in 4 different school districts in 2 different states, I have learned how important it is to get to know and understand the wishes, desires, and fears of the entire community, to be able to make the best decisions to alleviate those fears and support the desires while doing what is best for the students. My focus has always been on preparing students for an involved and thriving life after high school. With my experience as a teacher, administrator, school board member, and my community involvement, I am an excellent candidate for the Beloit School Board. Better schools for a better tomorrow.
Thank you, Greg. Now we will get ready with the question round. So again, I have all of the questions that the candidates got ahead of time in this bucket, and I'm just drawing one out, and we'll start down here with Megan. Megan will have 2 minutes to respond to the question, and then I will open it up for rebuttals. So please, candidates, raise your hand really high so I can see you. We'll take a max of 2 just in interest of time with a 1 minute, and then I'll just kind of mark off and try to keep track so we spread around those opportunities. Okay, Megan, what is your plan to increase and build trust between the Beloit community and school district leadership? Please be specific.
Thank you so much for the question. That's a fantastic question because trust is key. Relationships are really what matters when it comes to schools, families, and kids, and you can't have relationships without trust. I think one specific thing that I would work on would be to help bring people in very intentionally to help understand like how the district works and like really what the role of the school board is. It's something that we've teased around. I think the city council might have done some things like that where there's sort of like a civic kind of academy. I think as people understand like what the operations are, like why people make the decisions they do, I feel like it invites positive and constructive dialogue, and it also kind of like erodes at the idea that there's something like non-transparent or something kind of schemy going on. So I think being intentional and like reaching out to the community, creating spaces for that is really important, and I think it would really help our staff also feel more supported. I think another piece for trust building would be for us to, make sure that the district arrives in community spaces, because like I think the community partnerships we have are really valuable. I think we do a nice job bringing people in. We've had a lot of instability over the last few years in leadership and funding. If we can get this referendum across the line here, we've got a stable administration at the moment. That allows more capacity for our administration, our teachers, our board members to get out and go into spaces like community action, get into the city, get into schools, churches, meet people where they're at, and really just have honest and germane discussions. And I think, am I good on time? I think, cool, thanks, sorry, I wasn't looking. I think lastly, perfect, anticipated that. I think lastly too, I think just like reframing the conversations intentionally around what are we doing with and for our children, because I think a lot of times our kids get lost in these conversations. As a mom, I trust my kids' schools because every piece of communication I get from them, I'll stop, has to do with kids. Thanks.
Thank you, Megan. Would any other candidates like to speak on this topic with a 1-minute limit? Okay. Seeing now, oh, nope, go right ahead. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, as far as increasing and building trust between the community and the school district, I think it's important that the administrators live in the city and are out in the public so people can see them. You know, they can see them at a football game, at Woodman's, farmer's market. You know, when you don't have a home here, I don't think you're attached to the city.
Thank you, Bill. Please, go ahead, Juan.
For building trust in the community, obviously everyone screams transparency, of course, right? But how do you do that? And the current system has had opportunities to do that, and I really haven't seen it. Just being here and then talking to people who've been here a lot longer than myself. There's the roundtable talks that we've had. That was the first in I don't know how long, and it was expressed then that these need to happen more. They should have happened more. Things like that need to happen more. They can't just be talked about. Action has to be done with that. However we organize that, we have to organize that. I'd like to see that myself happen. Whether or not I'm on the board or not, it needs to happen. People need to know where the board stands, where the district is, and good or bad or indifferent, because not everything's perfect, but we have to come up with the solutions to make everything right. And I haven't seen it done, but I want to make that happen.
Thank you, Juan. And you're actually next up for a 2-minute question. How will you make decisions based on what's best for students without being influenced by your personal, political, or religious views, or by the influence of special interest groups? For the purpose of rebuttal, if you're an incumbent, there is a point here as well. If you're an incumbent, please give specific examples of how you've achieved this. So how will you make decisions in best interest of students without influence by your personal, political, or religious views or influence of special interest groups?
This position is nonpartisan, which is easy for me because I'm nonpartisan. I don't take one side or the other. There's goods on both sides. There's bads on both sides. I have to get the whole story. Again, I keep saying it, I read a book, not only just on the odd pages, I have to read the evens too to get the whole story. That's the only way to really get anything right, to get anything, a solid decision. I rely on hard data. I listen carefully to the educators and families as much as possible when they come to me. I reach out, say, please let me know, and I've heard and I take things into consideration, and I do the research on what they're saying. I look for best practices in education, not for my personal beliefs, but because I want what's right for the children based on data. Because political views become an emotional situation. Emotional situations ruin things for a lot of people, and in this case, though, what's at stake is their kids. We can't do that. We have to think about what's best for our kids. Solid data, in my opinion, is the best way to go to be able to come up with solid foundation on a decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan. Would anyone else like to speak on this topic for 1 minute? Go ahead, Megan. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love what you said about data-driven decision-making. As an educator, educators make data-driven decisions about children. I'd like to provide a specific example about how I've done that. There is mixed research out there about the effectiveness and safety of SROs, school resource officers, in our schools. And prior to the contract that we currently have being approved, I expressed, I'm not sure, let's find out. Had I made a decision arbitrarily based on my own beliefs, it would not have been the decision that we ultimately made. I worked with Chief Sales very closely. I listened to our teachers, our parents, our staff. I met with some students over at Beloit Memorial High School. And as a result of that, I wholeheartedly supported moving forward with the program because I saw we set ourselves apart with the amount of above and beyond work that our police officers, our city does in terms of training, trauma-informed responsive pieces for students. They're an essential part for many kids of their day-to-day school experiences. And so as board president, I ushered that along and it passed unanimously. So that is an example of doing so. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Megan. Any other responders to this question? Okay. Moving on, we have Joanne with a 2-minute question. What changes need to happen to increase school board and administrator accountability in our district?
Several key changes can help improve transparency, ensure effective governance, and foster a more open, responsive environment. So for enhanced transparency, we already regularly share the board meeting agendas, the minutes, and district reports with the community. They're hard to find, though, and for people that aren't tech savvy, it's impossible for them to pull them up. So why don't we take and put a blurb on our website that tells them, hey, these are the important talking points for the board tonight, or give a short summary of what happened the night before so that everyone can stay informed and do so in a way that's accessible. We need clear and measurable goals. We need specific measurable goals for both the school board and the administrators and ensure that progress are being made toward these goals. I don't know if there's ways that they assess school board members like they do teachers in the classroom, but I would love to see the metrics for that and see how I can improve as a board member and do right by my community. Community feedback loops are important, implementing a more consistent and structured way to gather feedback from teachers, students, and the broader community. There's a disconnect between what we hear in the boardroom and what we hear from teachers and from students in the buildings. Budget oversight and reporting, we need to increase accountability. We need to have clear explanations for any budget cuts or reallocation of funds, and everything needs to be communicated to our citizens in a way that they understand. So we need to build trust through consistency. We need to consistently apply policies and rules, our code of conduct, and ensure that accountability is maintained. By prioritizing transparency, measurable goals, consistent communication, and community involvement, we can create an atmosphere of accountability where everyone, from the school board to the teachers to the administrators, is focused on improving outcomes for students and ensuring the success of our district.
Thank you, Joanne. Would anybody like to respond to this question? Okay, I will move on. Bill, you have 2 minutes to respond. How can we decide if we are actually top-heavy and whether or not we should make cuts to administration?
Well, I don't think you can say they're top-heavy. Oh, I can't say that we're top-heavy until you actually go to the COLAC and sit down and find out what everybody does. You can't just say we have too many people because you don't know what everybody does. If we have, 1 or 2 people that are overlapping, maybe we can combine that into one job. But, you know, the city of Beloit tried that when they got rid of the clerical, and it cost them about $1 million in the long run by not listening to people. Everybody has a job, and you just need to go in and figure out what each one is doing, and then, you know, what the pay is and everything, and go from there. I just don't think you can come in and say we need to get rid of people.
Thank you, Bill. Would anybody else like to speak on this topic? Yes, Greg, please.
I agree with what Bill said. I mean, you have to start taking a look at what is the job description, but beyond that, we need to look at what is it that they are actually doing, because we all know that the most dangerous line in any job description is the last one, other tasks as assigned. So the job description is not going to give you a picture of everything that they do. But even as we do this, we always have to consider what is the impact of removing that position from the district on the future of the district and the students that are involved. For example, you know, there's been a call for eliminating some of the assistant principals in the elementary schools. However, they're also the ones that spend most of their time dealing with the individuals that have behavioral issues in the schools. Eliminating them eliminates the support for the students and for the teachers there. So we have to also look at what is the impact on students as we consider those positions.
Thank you. Any other comments on this question? Please, Joanne.
I think we need to examine administrative salaries versus student outcomes. Assess whether our administrative spending aligns with improvements in student achievement, teacher support, and overall district performance. We need to survey teachers, staff, and parents, gather input from those directly impacted by the district admin to determine if leadership roles provide meaningful support or if there are areas of inefficiency. We need to redirect savings to the classroom if cuts are made. We need to invest in teachers, student programs, and resources that directly impact learning. Along with that, we need to ensure that we have equity and efficiency. Any reductions should be made strategically to avoid negatively affecting underfunded schools or essential services. We need to let our community know as well what is happening to improve our transparency, to our fiscal responsibility, and improve prioritizing student success and classroom support.
Thank you, Joanne. Greg, I have a 2-minute question for you. Beloit has a serious problem with absenteeism. What are your thoughts on how we might address this problem and decrease chronic absenteeism?
You know, every Student Succeeds Act defines chronic absenteeism as missing more than 10% of the school days, irregardless of why they are absent. Students are absent for many different reasons that they don't attend schools. While our attendance rate is growing, and we are still not at the pre-COVID level. Research has found that parents keep their children home with fewer illness symptoms and keep them home longer than they did before COVID. COVID has also led to the belief that school attendance doesn't matter. This district has already implemented Attendance Matters program to help change that belief. Older students oftentimes are responsible for taking care of younger siblings while their parents are at work. That may indicate that we need to expand before and after school programs, but they also need more affordable child care options. You know, the high school has moved to the Ford Next Generation Learning Academy model, which is increasing academic and in career choices at the middle school level also to engage students in their education and prepare them for achieving their goals. We need to continue to support and expand options for students to increase their interest and their desires for the courses that we have. You know, we need to look at and talk with students as to why they don't attend school. And so that we can better meet their needs in order to do that. So that we can also maybe look at creating an attendance team to work with the Pupil Services Department in their efforts to increase attendance. You know, we need to help individual students overcome the barriers that they face to coming to school, be it housing instability, a lack of transportation needs, childcare issues, bullying concerns, and many, many more objects. But we need to know what those concerns are so that we can address them properly.
Thank you, Greg. Would anyone else like to speak on this topic? Okay, we'll start with Joanne. Thank you.
So research absolutely shows a strong correlation between absenteeism and failure to make gains, which makes tackling this issue urgent for the success of our students. In my own experience, I've seen the negative impact of absenteeism on my own students. I had a student while teaching here in Beloit who missed over 80 days of school, despite the fact that the child lived right across the street from one of our other schools here in the district. Why didn't we change them to the school that they needed to be at? The teachers there could have come across the street and encouraged them to come to school. I was across town. I didn't have that ability to do that. When we have children that are chronically absent in kindergarten, it sets the tone and habits that then follow them through their entire academic career.
Thank you, Joanne. Megan, please.
Thank you so much. Totally agree. I would just have to say that as an educator and as a parent, 100%, again, it comes down to relationships. Our kids have to feel safe. They have to feel loved. They have to feel that their needs are met. We also have to create safety outside of school. So for example, we have like the walking school buses, but even getting volunteers to commit to like safe walking home routes. I mean, there's so many opportunities here for community engagement, which again boils down to relationships. Last comment on that is one thing that I'm really proud of that came out of our ad hoc to reduce language barriers from a few years ago was we created the bilingual homeschool liaison position, which to the point that Ms. Drew just made, which was excellent, one of their main jobs is to engage with families and like build those relationships to problem solve, like how can we help you? Because if we are not being culturally responsive and responsive to all of the needs of like our whole children and whole families inside and outside the classroom, none of these other initiatives or none of the scary facts about it are really going to matter. It's all about relationships.
Thank you, Megan. We're going to come right back to you with a 2-minute question. Okay. What are the 3 things that we could do to increase student achievement in Beloit schools?
Thank you so much for the question. The first thing that we can do is make sure that our classroom teachers are fully resourced to meet the unique needs of all of their students, which not only includes the community coming together to fully fund our schools along with the state, which is a whole mess itself. But I think it also includes making opportunities for more meaningful community family engagement, because resources is not just like curriculum, right? It's people. You have to have enough staff. You have to have the right kind of staff with the right kind of training. There has to be like a true connection and relationship to really understand your students. So that would be the number one thing that we can do to improve academic achievement, meet the needs of our kids with caring and prepared individual teachers and community. I would say the next thing that we need to do, I'm going to lean back on the kind of instructional piece here. Materials really matter, so making sure that we stay committed to culturally and linguistically responsive curriculum that our teachers are adequately trained in and supported in, but given the flexibility to be professionals as teachers. There's a big movement, big push right now to sort of deprofessionalize educators and like, you know, follow the thing, follow the thing, follow the thing. And we need to make sure that we have a culture that empowers our teachers to make decisions about how they teach their students based on their knowledge of their students, because we don't teach subjects, we teach kids. The third thing that I think we need to do to increase academic achievement, is that where we're at? Okay. I would say the last thing that we need to do is, really just like establish strong and meaningful relationships. I know I'm going to sound like a broken record here, with families, because we only have kids in school for so much time. If you factor in the amount of time those kids are asleep and on summer vacation and everything else, they spend most of their time with their families. And all research out there says that if you have strong family involvement, which is not something that just occurs naturally, we have to be systematic and intentional and resource appropriately our ability as a district to engage with families. Thank you.
It's time. Thank you, Megan. Would anybody else like to speak on this topic for 1 minute? Please, Bill, go right ahead.
Yes, what I'd like to say is not only the attendance, but people missing, but the kids not getting to school on time. You know, when you come at 10, 11 o'clock, and I was at the grade schools first, so I would see them. I'd tell them, you know what, you play soccer, you play baseball, you're starting out behind 2-0 because the kids that are here on time have learned for 2 hours, and that's all past. And the one thing you can't get back is time.
Thank you, Bill. Greg, please.
I mean, we need to seriously take a look at what are the needs of the students that we have, because there are so many things that interfere with student achievement. If we start looking at students who are hungry because they didn't have dinner last night, students that haven't slept well because they're sleeping on a friend's couch, a student that doesn't know where they're going to be living tonight, all of those things begin to interfere with the student's concentration and the ability to learn, as well as taking a look at the needs such as mental wellness, student behaviors, because that distracts from everybody. Again, attendance is a part. If they're not there, they can't learn. So there are a lot of other factors that we also need to take a look at, and how do we address each of those concerns so that we have the best prepared students to learn once they get to school. But also, it's also beginning to partner with community groups to do things like early brain development and early literacy.
That's time. Thanks, Greg. Okay, we're going to move on to Juan with a 2-minute question. If the state law were changed and residency for administrators could be enforced as a condition of employment, would you support such a policy, and why?
If the state law allowed residency to be enforced for administrators, I'd have to weigh the benefits and drawbacks carefully. You know, on one hand, having a leader who lives in the community can build stronger local connections. The other hand, the most important factor is the administrator's ability to serve our students effectively, regardless of their home addresses. My decision would always be guided on what's best for the students. So, for example, if I have 2 candidates, they're presented and they both have the same qualifications, and the only difference being the local one is local and the other one's not, I'd always prefer local. You always have to try to do what your community is going to resound with. You have to have a resonance with your community. And local is always the best, in my opinion. You have to really weigh the facts and try to shoot for local, but we have to be realistic here. At the end of the day, what is best for our parents? If I have a local candidate, but I have another candidate willing to come in that's far, far superior, that's a heavy weight to really decide. So are you just Beloit proud, or are you really thinking about your child at this point, which is going to be better? I try to shoot for my child, but it would have to be something so outrageous for me to go over local. I would prefer local, but again, it's not out of my mindset to weigh the facts and pull the data and see what the hard facts would be and how it would affect our children in our district.
Thank you, Juan. Would anyone else like to speak on this topic? Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, there's ways that when you make up a contract that you can, make it so they want to come to Beloit, and if they want to come to Beloit, they're going to stay in Beloit. And, if they have a place here to live and the money isn't flying down the road to Milwaukee, then they plan on staying. And that's what we want. We want people, the best people for our kids, but we want them also for the community.
Thank you, Bill. Would anyone else like to speak on this topic? Sure, Greg, go ahead.
Well, I agree that living in the community where you work is always the best way to learn about and become involved in the community. But in today's society, where both adults in a family are working, the ability to move can become a very difficult issue. There are many legitimate reasons why a spouse or family can't move. The spouse's job requires them to live within a distance from work, such as a police officer, a firefighter, and many doctors have to live within a certain distance of their work. Also, if one of them is the caregiver for an elderly and frail parent, or if one of the family members needs to be close to a medical provider, Small communities like Beloit can't offer the same level and quality of employment as other cities. And so if we had a residency requirement, we are going to eliminate a lot of highly qualified people from even applying for a job to come to Beloit. And therefore, Beloit deserves the best possible candidates.
Thank you, Bill. All right, we're going to go to Joanne for a 2-minute question. Joanne, please share your opinion on standardized testing.
I'm a teacher. I've seen the consequences of standardized testing over the years. When I first started teaching, we began standardized testing in 2nd grade. They took the Terra Nova, and it was a practice test. And then 3rd grade, we took the reading test. That was a Wisconsin-based test. And then over the years, the children would have 1 or 2 tests that they would take. Then we got the MAPS test. We started doing that in 3rd grade, and then they moved it down to 2nd, and then to 1st, and then to kindergarten. And if your child was in the dual language program, your child took 6 tests on the MAPS assessment alone. Then they also took their ELL test, the English Language Learner test. And then once they got up into 3rd grade, along with all of those tests, they also took the forward exam. That's too much testing. If we're testing, we're not teaching. I also saw children who worked so hard all year long, and we'd build them up, and all of a sudden, in a moment's time, their confidence would crumble because some of the test questions were written so strangely. And even in kindergarten, they will write 2-part questions. 2-part questions are sometimes confusing for even adults. So having these 5-year-olds who are just learning how to do school are now having to do that. That being said, we do need measures that help show what our children are learning and where we need to do better. Formative assessments, summative assessments, having benchmarks that we reach within our district can help us shoot for what our actual targets are and have real-time data that we can use in the moment to change things for our students to make it better.
Thank you, Joanne. Would anyone else like to speak on this topic? Go ahead, Megan.
Thank you. Standardized testing does not work for children because children are not standardized. The only reason we have standardized testing is because politicians have decided that that is how we should evaluate learning. Massachusetts is piloting something and has been for the last several years called annualized performance-based assessments. They're growth-based portfolio models. They fill the need of standardized testing, and they've had great success. In fact, they're presenting at a conference shortly in Dallas. I just got an email from them today because I'm on their mailing list. It's very interesting stuff. I will also say that Dylan William, who's like the leading educator on formative assessment, talks about in his book sort of the definitive work on assessment, good assessment for students that teachers actually use. Why rely on an out-of-focus snapshot taken by a stranger? So as a teacher, especially as a reading teacher, I care a lot about student accountability, making sure that, like, not accountability, but performance, make sure we're accountable to those kids. I want a better picture with triangulated data with multiple metrics, not a standardized test.
Thank you, Megan. Anybody else? Juan, please.
I agree with what Joanne said. Kids are not standardized. We're all cut from a different mold, right? So in order to have this happen, there has to be a balanced approach. It combines, if they have to use this, we have to use a standardized test. We have to have an approach that combines these tests with other forms of assessments to give us a better, fuller picture of the student's abilities, not just relying on just one specific test. So I would say, yeah, it's like speaking to your audience. You recognize your audience. So if you're going to give a standardized test to a high school person, you got to make sure that it's speaking to their their developmental process in their life. And then when it comes to a kindergartner, same thing. So you have to really assess, and you have to do multiple different kinds of assessments to do that, not just one. So the standardized testing would work if it was combined with other different means of testing.
Thank you, Juan. And we are going to go on to Bill with a 2-minute question. Bill, what is your opinion of Chromebooks or iPads being an integral part of elementary school? And how do you believe this program has affected student achievement?
One of these times I'll catch on. The Chromebooks have their needs for, the kids in the elementary. I think sometimes they spend too much and they need a break from the screen time to kind of refocus. Our achievements have gone down from regular books. I think sometimes kids like to read, and getting away from, just the screen and then focusing in on that. And they are expensive, and, maybe they're better at the high school and the older kids, and, maybe the intermediates, that would help. I know that they had a couple of occasions last year where they were stolen at one of the schools, and I don't know how much they are to replace, but that's what I think.
Thank you, Bill. Would anyone like to speak on this? Juan, please.
So digital devices like iPads, they offer exciting and interactive ways to learn. But research does show that traditional printed books have unique benefits for elementary students. For example, there was a study done by Ann Manjin, Benti Wohl-Germinal, and Kolbjörn Bronick in 2013 that found that children reading print text scored better on comprehension tests compared to those reading on screens. The tactile experience of handling a book with its physical pages and fewer distractions seem to support deeper focus and retention. Additionally, another study done by Singer and Alexander in 2016 demonstrated that cognitive processing involved in reading print can lead to better understanding and memory of the material. In other words, while iPads can enhance learning in certain ways, relying on printed books for core curriculum subjects may offer a more effective foundation for our young learners.
Thank you, Juan. Anybody else? Joanne, please.
As a kindergarten teacher, this one is really important to me. Our students in kindergarten, they come to us now not able to cut, not able to hold a crayon the right way. And the reason why is because they're not getting those same tactile experiences as toddlers and youngsters that they used to have. Children that use tablets a lot in the school district, and let me say, they're not iPads that we're using, they're Chromebooks, and it is the most difficult thing for a kindergartner to log into their Chromebook. It affects their bone and muscle development. If you look at x-rays, and I have x-rays if you want to see them, their little fingers are just floating in there. And so all that pushing on the tablet, it hurts their development. It causes lack of focus. Their brain developed, their frontal lobe is not fully developed. It hits that addiction center of our brains, and they're not able to self-regulate, which then leads to behavior issues, and it causes problems for the classroom in general.
Thank you, Joanne. All right, we are at Greg with a 2-minute question. Policy 672.1 limits the amount that a superintendent may spend or commit the district to without seeking board approval. Do you support the requirement of board approval for any expense exceeding $25,000, or do you see this as micromanagement?
I know policy 672.1 was just gone through and just updated, which raised the limit to 25,000. In some cases, that may not be the proper level that comes back for board approval, but it is the board's responsibility to approve the spending and monitor the budget. The Business Operations and Finance Committee receives a very detailed financial report monthly that is then sent on to the full board for approval. Again, this is for items that are things that have already happened. I support the requirement for board approval of large purchases as long as there is an exception for emergencies. For example, if a large heating system in a building failed in the middle of the winter, we can't wait until the next board meeting to get approval to replace that furnace without causing damage within the building and having to shut it down. So there needs to be an exclusion in some cases where the superintendent can authorize the expenditures to repair those services, and then to bring that information to the board as soon as possible so that we are all aware of it. There are some items like that we just cannot wait for approval for the district to move forward with. I don't see this as micromanaging. This is just being aware of and being responsive to and responsible for the way the funds that the district has are being spent.
Thank you, Greg. Would anyone else like to speak on this topic? Go ahead, Juan.
So this idea of the board approving these expenditures, and of course, yes, there's always going to be emergencies, of course, but there should already be a method and procedures for those emergencies. Regardless, the $25,000 cap, I'm not privy to behind the scenes of why they came up with this number in particular, but we have to remember the policy is a safeguard for overspending. It ensures that significant financial decisions are made with careful oversight and with the community's input. So it's practical to check that. It's a practical check that helps to protect the taxpayers' funds. So we have to all look out for everybody. But in the event of an emergency out here, does get cold and whatnot, is the $25,000 going to cover something like that? We have to make sure that it would cover something like that. But I don't see it falling for, 8 or 9 or 10 of the schools at the same time. That's a rare occurrence. So I think it's a good idea.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak for 1 minute on this topic? Okay. I will move on. We are back to you, Megan, with a 2-minute question. Oh, my bucket's getting low. I know, it's that time of night. All right. Parents frequently name student behavior as the reason they have removed their child from Beloit School District. Do you believe that the current student code of conduct is being enforced in our schools? Please explain.
Thank you so much for the question. This is such a hot topic, and I will say that as a board member that helped, revise our last code of conduct policy, I think we have a very solid code of conduct, but, like all policies should be revised. It is the board's role to set policy. It is the administration's role to execute policy, and it is the board's responsibility to hold our one employee accountable to make sure that that is being properly executed. What I will say is that people are a little messy. I've been a classroom teacher here in Beloit. I've been a classroom teacher in Whitewater. I'm a classroom teacher at Parkview right now. I can cite instances at all schools of saying, well, I'm not sure, there was maybe a little wiggle room here and there, and that's maybe not something I'm comfortable with or something I appreciate. People are complicated. So I think when we talk about enforcement of the code of conduct, there has to be a really clear communication and a shared understanding of what that means. The purpose of the code of conduct is to keep our students and our staff safe. I think that it's important for us to understand that somebody's interpretation of whether something is fairly enforced is their interpretation, and I think it would really behoove the school district to do a lot of, we talk about building community trust. That's something where I would love to bring the community in. Here's actually like what these practices look like. Hear from administrators, hear from teachers, because sometimes there are things that get misrepresented, et cetera, et cetera. Bottom line is there's always going to be room for improvement to enforce the code of conduct. There's always going to be room for improvement in all of our practices as educators, right? Because it's a continuous improvement piece. So I guess I'm not going to say that I believe there's like a rampant issue one way or the other. I mean, I think this is just the good faith work of people who are doing difficult frontline, work with our kids every day. I think we all have to be mindful, and I think the board has set and will continue to set, regardless of who's elected, a high expectation for our administrators and for our teachers to make sure we have safe classrooms for all of our kids and teachers. I guess that's my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Responses? Go ahead, Joanne.
Behavior issues are rampant in our district. I encountered situations where students would exhibit extreme behaviors. I was hit. I was kicked. I was punched. I was choked. These were 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds, and they loved me. They didn't like being in the classroom, though. They weren't able to read. They weren't able to write. They weren't able to do the math that we were required to do. And so they wanted out. And hurting me was their way out. And when they left the room, they went to the office. And the office was fun. There were snacks. There were people that would give them one-on-one attention. I couldn't compete, no matter how much I loved them, no matter how much I built community. Furthermore, most of these were misclassified as student toward student aggression rather than student toward teacher aggression. I talked to teachers in 4 different buildings this afternoon, and I asked, because I want to know that it's getting better. I want to hear that so much for our students and our teachers, and I heard it's
Sorry,
the same.
Joanne, I have to cut you off. That's time. I feel so bad doing that. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this topic? Here we go. Greg, go ahead, please.
You know, we can always improve on the enforcement of the code of conduct. But what we have to remember is, you know, if your 5th grade student who is failing social studies, you just don't punish them until they catch up. You teach them. The same is true with behavior. We need to teach students appropriate behavior and the harm done by their bad behavior. That's how they begin to learn. That's when we can truly impact student behavior. We need to go beyond just the code of conduct. I'm not saying to get rid of the code of conduct. That is important. But we need to go beyond that to support our teachers and support our students to improving their behavior within the school.
Thank you, Greg. No, I can only do 2 rebuts, otherwise we're going to run out of time. Sorry. Thank you, Bill. All right, I'm going to go on to Juan with a 2-minute question. Few people would dispute the benefits of recess for children. If elected, would you support increasing recess time for elementary and middle school students? Why or why not?
So recess isn't just a break. It is essential for children's physical health, their social skills, their overall well-being. Research does show that more recess can lead to better focus, improved behavior, and higher academic performance. At the same time, we have to acknowledge that recess is where bullying often happens the most. If we increase the recess time, we must also ensure that it remains safe and positive for all students. This means proper supervision by staff, parent volunteers, or a combination of both, to create an environment where kids can play, socialize, and recharge without fear. I do support exploring ways to extend recess safely while maintaining academic rigor and ensuring student well-being, but there has to be a limit to it. There has to be reasons. There has to be, not just everybody. It should not be looked as a right, in my opinion. It should be looked at as a privilege. So yes, that's how we have to hold our students accountable as well. There's accountability to that, because it's easy to say, yeah, take as much recess as possible. I know for a fact, like my child, he has to take breaks from his studies. He can't just focus steady, and he comes back and his brain's fried. So that's where it becomes important for recess. So determining on the child, it's hard to determine, but we have to figure out what each student does need regarding recess and breaks in mental capacity. The bullying is an issue, and so if we have more, we have to make sure that they're safer. And if we don't, then we have to deal with the students and how they're going to be fried and their negative impact. So it's a finer line to really think about doing than just they're getting too much play time and they're getting spoiled, or they're not getting enough and that's it. We really have to balance it out.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on this topic? Bill.
Yes, I think being at the grade schools almost every day, I see the physical activity, and the kids love that recess, and it's really needed. And just being inside on days when they didn't have recess, the excess energy the kids had and the teachers trying to stop and control all that, yeah, I mean, they were just wound up. And when they get outside, they get some fresh air, they get activity, they can play sports, they can do all kinds of things and intermingle with everybody else. I think it's just very important to have.
Thank you, Bill. Megan, please.
Thank you so much. Actually, my very first involvement with the school district of Beloit was when me, Kim Schneider, and Adam Aberle approached the board to ask for increased recess time back in 2015. There are numerous studies that show that kids not only learn through play, but it is developmentally appropriate and healthy for them. I think when we absolutely should have more recess. This speaks. I know Joanne agrees with me on this, and it speaks to the whole standardized test culture of ruining how we do school. But what I really want to get across about recess is that addressing this whole issue about behaviors, right? We're not creating conditions for our kids that they need to develop the social skills and self-management that they need to be able to be safe participants in schools all the time. It is research supported that recess helps kids develop and refine expertise in social and emotional interaction, self-management, pro-social skills, empathy, compassion, etc. I fully support more recess, and I think it should be up to the building administration and teachers to see what is appropriate. Lastly, kids do learn through play, developmentally so. Thank you.
Thank you. Joanne, we're going to go to you with a 2-minute question. Stuck. Oh, goodness. I should have crumpled them a little bit. Okay. SDB has lost many teachers over the past few years, and we are now resorting to agency hires to fill our needs. Please explain how Beloit might attract and retain quality educators.
I was one of the teachers they lost. We need to make sure that we are listening to our teachers, that we understand that they are credible, that their stories are real. It is happening. We need to have a positive work environment, a strong school culture. We need our principals to be people that we see as our allies, our friends. I still have some thank you notes that my principals wrote me over the year. Mrs. Schwengels wrote me one for having a warm environment in my classroom for open house, and I read those at the beginning of the year every year. Mr. McReynolds, he would celebrate teachers' accomplishments at the beginning of every staff meeting. We called them our celebrations. Teachers need their voice to be heard. They need to be a part of decision-making and school initiatives. I helped change the breakfast program shortly before COVID happened. We used to have a board meeting where it would be a committee that had teachers, community members, parents, and some board members. And I brought to our board members, I said, look, this is what we are feeding our children. It was full of sugar. It was like more than 2 candy bars and a soda's worth of sugar. And then they made the Airmark people come in and give a presentation. And I was able to say, nope, that's not actually what I'm seeing in my children's breakfasts. And the next week, there was change. We had fresh fruits. We had less sugary things in our breakfasts. Teachers love to be part of doing things that do things right for our children. And if we give our teachers voice, if we support them in the classroom and make sure that they are able to teach because their classrooms are calm and supportive environments, then we will keep our teachers and we'll be able to attract more teachers because we do pay our teachers well. They're just not safe in our classrooms right now and they're not able to teach.
Thank you, Joanne. Would anyone else like to speak on this? Juan.
So teachers are the heart of our educational system. To attract and retain them, we have to create supportive environments that include competitive pay, the robust professional development, and the mentorship programs. When educators feel respected and well-equipped, they're more likely to stay and succeed, right? So this benefits our entire district. We also need to create an environment where the student code of conduct is enforced consistently, not just every once in a while, so that the teachers know that they don't have to shoulder the whole burden of classroom disruptions alone. When the administration stands firmly behind the teachers and holding their clear behavioral policies, they feel supported and secured, which goes a long way in reducing stress and boosting job satisfaction. The research has shown that when they perceive their work the environment to be supportive, their leadership takes a strong, consistent stance on upholding the standards, teacher retention improves significantly. For example, if a classroom issue arises that disrupts learning, a teacher should be able to count on prompt administrative intervention. The support not only helps manage the immediate situation, but also reinforces a culture where the entire team is committed
I must
to
stop you,
maintaining.
Juan. Sorry.
That's fine.
Thank you. All right. Moving on to the next question. 2 minutes for you, Bill. Was that only one? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that was only one. Is there any other rebuttals for that? Sorry about that. Sure, Megan, yes.
Very briefly, fully support and agree with all of that. One thing that I meant to mention earlier when you were talking about behavior that pertains to teachers is Stephanie Hormig is a local I think domestic violence counselor. She just completed a study on teacher burnout. And one of the suggestions that she had, and I'm hoping she'll come to one of our board meetings soon to present on this, is just like we have policy to be trauma informed and responsive with our students, we should have policies for that for teachers, because secondhand burnout is absolutely a real thing. It's why a lot of teachers not only leave Beloit, but leave the profession entirely. And it's not just a here issue, it's like an everywhere issue. So I think something that like actionable we could do, like realistically pretty soon, would be to listen to her research, look at some other things, and like really pioneer creating policy around protecting the social emotional well-being of our staff. Lisa, we've got a local expert here who can help inform that study, and I think that that would also produce a better climate for our students. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Bill, we'll go to you with a 2-minute question. Aldrich Middle School has a school within a school alternative education program for students that do not respond well or are not succeeding in a traditional classroom. Should such a program be duplicated at other district schools?
One of these times I'll get it. Absolutely. If we're doing something good at one of these schools and sit down and talk to the people that are running and find out what they're doing and expand it to all the schools. That way, the whole district is the same and, they can, all prosper. When things are going good, I mean, we just, when things are bad, everybody hears about it. But when they have good things, we don't want to, they don't hear about it. And Beloit has a lot of good things. So I think a program like that should be at every school. And if it was up to me, I'd have Principal V run them all.
Thank you. Go ahead, Joanne.
In the school year 2021-2022, elementary teachers that were part of the BEA went to admin and asked, can we replicate this program in our elementary schools? And they were told no.
Is there any other rebuttals? Sure, Greg.
The middle school alternative program at Aldrich is part of the Beloit Learning Academy's distance learning. While this works for middle schools, this same type of program in the elementary schools is not going to work. Students in the elementary school are not going to achieve successfully on distance learning. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't look at alternative programs or classrooms within our buildings, but we need to make sure if we're going to do that, that the classroom is structured to meet the needs of the students in that building, which is not the same in every building in our district. So when we look at alternative ways to serve our students, we have to be careful that it meets the needs of that building and not just duplicating what Aldrich is doing.
Thank you, Bill. We will be moving on to the last question. It will be Greg with a 2-minute question. And there will be rebuttals for this as well. Attending meetings is an expectation of every board member. Some board members frequently participate virtually rather than in person. Would you support a policy limiting the number of times a board member may participate virtually? And what can we expect from you once you're seated as a board member?
I think that it is very important for board members to attend all board meetings in person. However, we all know that there are times when that's just not possible. If you end up having to work late in another community, you could be driving. You can't be there on time. You can participate virtually until you arrive at the boardroom. And sometimes there are times when somebody may need to be in another place. But what if a board member is sick? We definitely probably don't want them sitting next to you in a board meeting. But that shouldn't limit their right to participate in that discussion. So while it is always the best to be in person, there has to be an option to allow board members to participate when they can't be there in person. Now, I've been retired. Our plans have always been to travel. We travel once or twice a year. But when I do that, I always try to make sure that it's possible for me to attend virtually. So even interrupting my own vacation time to do that. And in one case, it meant even renting another hotel room so I had a secure room to be in to participate in the meeting. So we can do that safely when it is not possible to be here in person. I think if everybody was required to be here all of the time, it's just not going to work. Nobody can go on vacation. You can't be sick. You can't do all kinds of things. So we have to be able to allow people to participate virtually when it's necessary.
Thank you, Greg. Any other responses to this question? Okay. Seeing none, that will wrap up our question portion. We will start down on the end with Megan with a 1-minute close for each candidate.
I'd like to thank everybody who attended this evening and who organized this event tonight. I'm here because I want to make sure that there are proactive systems to support all of our kids' social, emotional, academic behavior, sense of community needs, and I believe that we have begun that work with our strategic plan, and I'm excited to see it continue. Our kids are not numbers on a report. They're not statistics, right? We look at numbers to help us understand whole children, what their needs are, and how best to meet them. I really want to see our community rally around this common cause and vision for our kids. I really believe that if we all work together, all of us, regardless of where we are seated in any official capacity, can create safe, joyful learning spaces for all of our kids and teachers. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you, Megan. Juan Romero.
Thank you all of you for being here tonight, for being part of this important forum. It is important. Our schools are the foundation of our community, and the decisions that we make today will shape the future of our children. I believe the potential of our children and our students and the dedication of our educators, but they need the right support to succeed. We need strong leadership that listens, that takes actions, and puts students first. That means ensuring that our schools are safe, our finances are managed responsibly, and our teachers have the support that they need. Estoy comprometido a asegurar que todas las voces en nuestra comunidad sean escuchadas, which means I am committed to making sure that all the voices of our community are heard. If I'm elected, I will work to rebuild the trust through transparency, accountability, and open communication. I'm ready to listen, to learn, to collaborate, to give every child in Beloit the strong education they deserve. I would be honored to earn your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan. Joanne Rue.
When I taught third grade, we'd go to the Big Hills Park to do the maple syrup field trip. And my favorite part of that field trip every year was driving down Portland Avenue and pointing out my house that I grew up in. And I would tell the students, look, that window right there, that was my bedroom. And the children, you could see it wash over them. I can grow up and be like Mrs. Rue. I can have a job like this too. I want those possibilities for all of our Beloit students. In my time in Beloit as a teacher, I now have former students that are now teachers. I have former students that are now working in the medical field. I have a former student that's a business person for the Milwaukee Bucks and has a championship ring. All of our children deserve these kind of opportunities. And if I'm elected, I will work to make sure your children have those possibilities available to them.
Thank you, Joanne. Next up, Bill Johnson.
Thank you all for coming out and listening to us. I'd like to thank the BEA for endorsing me. I think that means a lot of what they're looking for. We need to make sure all kids can learn in a safe environment and the teachers are safe. And it's just disheartening to be the last in the state. I mean, there's no reason for that. We have a great community, great teachers, great people. We just need the board to help them and support them.
Thank you, Bill. And lastly, Greg Schneider.
Good evening, and thank you to those who organized this event and for all of you for taking your time to become more informed voters. You know, we don't pay for education. We invest in our future and the future of our youth and the future of our community. You know, after all, today's students are going to be running our businesses, serving in our governments, providing our health care when we get older. You know, I personally want the best educated, best prepared, best trained people to keep Beloit growing and a thriving community. I have spent my life striving to improve others' quality of life. Now is the time that we need to get together as a school community, Beloit as a community, the city, everyone involved, to work together to improve the school district of Beloit. You know, because it's the quality of our youth that will determine the quality of our future. With over 40 years as a teacher and administrator, 3.5 years on the school board, over 20 years in ordained ministry, my community involvement, and from what you've heard from me tonight, you can see that I'm an excellent candidate for the Beloit School Board.
It's time. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Thank you to the forum sponsors, Wisconsin Policy Monitor and Eyes on Beloit School Board. Thank you to the community. This is a packed room, so those of you who are here in person, thank you, and those who joined us online, we appreciate having you as well. And last but not least, thank you to all of these candidates for your willingness to step up and serve the Beloit community and Beloit children. Thank you.
Thank you.